Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight to have back with us today one of my most favorite guests, and his name is Wallace Henley, Senior Associate Pastor at Houston's Second Baptist Church. He formerly worked in the Nixon White House. He's authored several books that are a must-read, God and Churchill, and you may want to check out his writings at the Christian Post, as he's written a three-part series about what the Bible says about borders. Said, all right, we need to get back to true vetting of immigrants. Does that fit what you discovered in the Bible?
Yes, indeed. Right at the doorpost and the gatepost, Deuteronomy 6:9 and other passages says that the law was to be placed on the doorposts of the houses and the gates, so that the foreigners were to be admitted, but they needed to understand this is the kind of civilization we are. This is our commitment, and therefore you must comply with this. You may not embrace it, but you must comply with it. So in my in my immigration policy, border policy, if I were President of the United States, I would require that, first of all, everyone understand the foundations of Judeo-Christian civilization. I would have an orientation center. And I would require that people stay at that orientation center. Those who get in come to the orientation center and spend weeks there, enough there to learn. Then I would require that they make a commitment to at least the Bill of Rights and the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. I would make sure that they understood all that was reflected there. If they could not embrace that, if they could not commit to that, they should not be admitted to this country.
All right, so you're talking that at the point of entrance to the country, because I know I know that some people, I know that they have to go through that process somewhat to become a citizen, but you're saying initially, crossing the border, this is what they should do.
The border should feed straight into an orientation center. You don't go anywhere else in this country until you've gone through that orientation center and until you receive that orientation, even if you stay there for 6 weeks. But there would be people who would not get across the border. We would have very careful standards whereby we could investigate them before they even were allowed to cross the border into the orientation center. When people landed in New York in the early 20th century, they came into Ellis Island. And even though those people largely embraced a Judeo-Christian consensus because they came from Western Europe primarily, nevertheless, they were given very strong orientation. But I would say that the orientation has to go more than that. It has to be like a college course. It has to be extended over time. So you would not just walk into this country without first being clearly understanding the worldview that made the country a place you wanted to immigrate to in the first place.
Is a temporary closure the right thing to do to get this thing under control?
Until we can get an immigration policy that is balanced like that, I would say yes, except for those that can clearly demonstrate that they must have refuge. I think that's where the fairly side comes in and the warily side comes in gauging what has been their past involvement. So yes, that's going to require a tremendous amount of investigation. It's going to be very cumbersome, but I don't think we can just exclude everyone.
All right, let me take a little break a little early here, only because my next question, you can ponder it. What do we do now with the whole issue of the illegals that are here because of our broken policy and our broken immigration walls? What do we do? Because you know, Wallace, this is a huge controversial issue. And what do we do with that? So let me take a quick break. We're talking to Wallace Henley. By the way, he's written a three-part series in the Christian Post about what does the Bible say about borders. Look, he is brilliant. He's done his homework here. And I would encourage you to go to the Christian Post and print out all three parts 1, 2, and 3. It's a Bible study unto itself. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, theDove.us.
All right, we're back, and welcome back to Focus Today. Our good friend Wallace Henley is with us today. He's a senior associate pastor at Houston Second Baptist Church. He writes quite a few books. He's written constantly for the Christian Post. One of the books you have to get that he has written is called God and Churchill. And it is a fascinating read. And then the one that I keep referring to, in fact, it's still on my nightstand, Wallace, and that is Globequake. I'm constantly referring to about 3 chapters in there. And then your most recent book is?
Revival, Revolution, and Rebirth. It was written with Tom DeLay.
All right, there is a picture, and he co-authored that with Tom DeLay, Revival, Revolution, and Rebirth. And again, check that out at the bookstores as well. And then go to Christian Post and get the 3-part series that he's done on the theology of borders. Now, there's a term, the theology of borders. What does the Bible say about borders? All right, Wallace, the big question. Do we round up 11 million and throw them over the fence?
Well, what we do is what I did as a pastor on a micro scale in 2 of the churches where I was senior pastor. This was during the 1970s and early 80s when we were dealing with Vietnam and Cambodia. So I took a delegation from our church, of our leaders, to one of the settlement camps at Fort Walton, Florida, and we took Vietnamese refugees. We brought them into our community. They had to be sponsored by families in our community, in our church. We set up an orientation program for those refugees. We taught them the Bible. We taught them the Judeo-Christian worldview. We equipped them for jobs and taught them how to conduct themselves in our society. We did the same at a church in Birmingham where I was senior pastor with 120 Cambodian refugees. We found a workable approach for those who are already here. What I would do if I were Donald Trump and I was elected president of the United States, first thing I would do, I would defund Planned Parenthood. I would take that $500 million and I would find some other programs that could, and that would be quite easy to do, some other programs that could be eliminated, and I would find about $2 billion in the budget without increasing the budget at all, just by cutting some of those things already in there. I would require every illegal in the nation to commit to spend at least 6 weeks and maybe 3 months in an orientation center where they learn our worldview. They learn why we believe in the Bible and why the Judeo-Christian worldview is the worldview that has given them a country they wanted to immigrate to. Now, this may sound unworkable. It was not unworkable for us. We were able to do it on a small scale. It can be done on a large scale. That way you don't destroy those families, and at the same time you make sure that they're people who understand what it means to be an American.
You know, I underscore what you're saying here. I find it very interesting that a lot of people talk tough about throwing illegals back over the fence, but then all of a sudden this thing happened down in Austin, Texas at the town hall meeting with Donald Trump, and he took a survey of the crowd, and the crowd said, no, let's work with them. And I'm beginning to sense that is an underlying feeling across the country. Pragmatically, we can't gather them up and deport them, so what do? And how do we get them coming out of the shadows, number one? Number two, is it proper to put them on some kind of government assistance and give them a ballot to vote?
Not until they have been thoroughly oriented in the American system and in the foundations of the American system. They're free to vote after that any way they want to, if they go on to citizenship. I do not believe that anyone should vote who's not a citizen of this country. And I think the Constitution clearly stipulates that. Mm-hmm. So they would have to move on from my plan in the orientation centers to seek citizenship, and that would be another process they would have to go through, and then they get the vote.
Okay. Let's come back to the borders. And what does the Bible say? And I know that you've done a lot of research here. before we run out of time, the bottom line is that there should be a clear border policy. Tell us what you found.
Well, what I found in the scriptures is that the Word of God says the gates are to be open to the stranger, but your worldview is to be stated up front. So the gates are to be open. The stranger can come in, but you must also put guards at the gates. Nehemiah is concerned about rebuilding the towers as he was about rebuilding the walls. The towers were where the guards were. So there are people that you don't want into the gates, and you don't allow them in. And then when they're there, they are required to at least understand why your nation exists and what it is. Those are very important parameters. And so right at the beginning, if there are people, we investigate them, we discover that they've been part of an effort to destroy the constitutional system that we have in the United States. They're coming here for that purpose, as Tashfin did and others have. They would not even gain entry. They would not cross the gate. But those who do would have to have that opportunity to become real Americans if they're going to come to America.
Because one of the problems here is that most are coming to America for the benefits, not necessarily for the liberty and the freedoms.
But they need to understand how those benefits come about. They come about through a worldview that has produced a very productive society. Harvard University, many other places, I've quoted that in Globequake, have done surveys showing that the Judeo-Christian worldview produces the kind of economy that people will prosper in. And our founders understood that. That's why they said we're creating a society that is based on what our Creator has given us. So the first boundary in the theology of borders is transcendence. James Madison said that the understanding that's in the Declaration of Independence of the checks and balances in the government is the greatest commentary on the nature of man, the nature of sin. They understood that right up front. And so these idealists and romanticists who are running the government now have no understanding that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And so they construct policies that don't take that into account. That has to be in place, and people need to understand that right up front.
So there's a two-pronged thing going on here, Wallace. One is, let's take what you've learned through your theology of borders and what you've done through your research and study here, that we need to have the walls and the gates and the guards and the vetting and the processing of somebody coming through into this country to understand what America's all about. I get that. The other problem is the walls and the gates have all been broken down, and there's a lot of people here that didn't go through that process, and they're turning out to be bad people. Is that part of the border policy, or is that just part of crime policy?
Those who are clearly here to destroy us need to be expelled, without question. Those who are here under the doctrine of fairness because they need refuge, God has blessed this nation. We need to take them in, though, and we need to equip them with an understanding. The tragedy is that even our people cannot learn this. Native-born people can no longer learn this. You can't talk about it in the public schools. You can't teach children the basis of character. I drive by schools every day here in my area of Houston, and I see this week's character is mercy, but there's no reference point for that. That's what I mean by the absence of transcendence. So there has to be a return to that understanding. In the meantime, we've got to manage the problem we've got. Keep out those who clearly come in to destroy us. We know the denominations, if you will, of those religious movements that are trying to get in here to do that. That's what they're driven by. But leave the gate open wide enough for those who come to contribute, like the nurse at MD Anderson. That's the balance that we've got to strike immediately, right now. And the only way to carry that out is to be very decisive that our policy henceforth is going to be with fairness, but also with wariness. We're going to have suspicion, but we're also going to try to administer fairness to those who really need refuge.
Do you sense that the atmosphere, Wallace, in the country now, given where we are in this election cycle and everything else, that there may now truly be an awareness in America that we need to fix this, and that, let's say Trump becomes president, that he has now shown the most interest in fixing the problem. He's put forth the most rhetoric as it relates to the problem. That America's ready to really do something about it?
Well, I'm still troubled by the fact that the last favorability rating for President Obama was 54%. That was, if that's accurate, that is extremely disturbing to me. That after all the things that have happened, people are still supporting a president who's given us the worst presidency in the history of our country and the most dangerous presidency in the history of our country, 54%. And then I read that Hillary Clinton, despite everything we know about her handling of foreign policy, intelligence, everything else, Hillary Clinton is still, it's a squeaker between her and Trump. This is very disturbing. So I'm not sure it's penetrating. And it's not penetrating with the generation that is going to hold the future. They're in the academic institutions that have sold out to progressive leftism. I was reading just this morning that at one of the universities in North Carolina, the ratio between Democrats and Republicans on the faculty is 12-1. 12-1. That's incredible. So I'm not very idealistic or optimistic about this. I think it will take a very tough president to get this moving in the right direction.
All right, because you're kind of touching on something I talked about earlier today. In spite of all of the scandals that surround Hillary Clinton, there's a real possibility she gets elected. What does that say that happened to us long ago before we got to this election cycle?
Well, it said that the generation of the 1960s became the power structures of the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s, and they're the people who now sit in the seats of power. And they've been able to do this because of those 5 establishments that I talk about almost every time I'm on this program, which is the information establishment, entertainment establishment, academic establishment, political establishment, and corporate establishment, NFL being a perfect example. These establishments define the debate. And they propagate the propaganda that goes into the textbooks and into the classrooms. And until those establishments turn around, I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio can order up a jet and run from the mobs. The Facebook guy can build a wall around his house out in Hawaii while he's for open borders. These are hypocrites who are running and who are sitting in the seats of power in the nation. And they control what people mindlessly watch on their television screens every single night. And they don't think that deep. They don't think that deep. And because of that, we're in a great deal of trouble.
Yeah, amen, brother. And you know, the other part, it come over to the Kaepernick controversy, and now it's just wildfire through the NFL of various players who are sitting out the national anthem as some means of protest. I asked a question to our viewers and listeners this morning: what can football lovers do to send a message to the NFL that would really impact? Because right now the NFL is so big, so much money, so much power and influence. They're just snubbing their nose at us, and so are the owners.
I listened to part of that before we were on, and I agree totally with Paulina. I think she has the answer. I think we find out the sponsors, we boycott those sponsors. We've shown Target some very important things. I think we boycott those NFL sponsors and the sponsors of those teams. Money is the only thing that wakes up this very materialistic, selfie environment in which we live.
Wow. Wallace, you're an inspiration, my friend. Thank you for your long hours of study and work. I want to say to our viewers and listeners, go to the Christian Post, read the 3-part series about what does the Bible say about borders. And I think what Wallace has done for us here is a great service in doing the research and making it available. It's also known as the theology of borders. There's one for you. And the Bible does talk about these things, so it's very relevant. And you can pick that all up at the Christian Post website. And by the way, look for his books. The one that I just refer to so much is Globequake. That's still available. You can get that one. If you haven't read God and Churchill, you're in for a real treat. You got to read that one. And the latest one again is Revival, Revolution, and Rebirth. He has co-authored that with former Congressman Tom DeLay, and I think you'll find that to be fascinating. Brother, you're an inspiration.
By the way, Barry, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I want to announce to your viewers and listeners, this is the first time it's been publicly announced, Paramount Studios is going to bring out a movie on God and Churchill.
Really? Congratulations,
Yes.
my friend. When you starting all that?
Well, the process has already begun. Not the filming, but getting the script and so forth. All that has already begun.
Oh, congratulations, my friend. That's wonderful. Let's stay in touch, okay?
Good deal.
Hey, the salmon and steelhead are biting, and I don't see Wallace Henley up here.
Well, I was in Montana a few weeks ago, so I'll get over to Oregon.
Okay, buddy. God bless. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Back.